Hello and welcome back to the Irish Racing YouTube channel. Another episode of Formscan in association with Midnight Bet. Looking forward to this weekend's action, and I'm delighted to be joined by Johnny Ward to preview with me. We're going all over the place this weekend, Johnny. Navan, Limerick, Kelso, Naas, wherever you want it, we're going. And the flat is definitely back after the Curragh last weekend, but we've got the Madrid Handicap to look forward to. It's kind of a transitional period, I suppose, this time of year.
Yeah, I love the flat, to be honest. I'm actually in Limerick on Sunday, but I will have half an eye on Naas, and I love the fact that Cheltenham just leads you into the first 2-year-old race of the season, the first sight you'll see of the offspring of the new Stallions. And we've a very thought-provoking Madrid as well on Sunday, and the Madrid can be even a classic kind of trial nowadays. So yeah, I'm delighted the flat is back.
It can indeed. We saw most recently Paddington emerging from that. But before we get too excited about the action in Naas, we'll go to Navan first to start off our preview of the weekend. We'll have a couple of races from Navan and Kelso before we go into Sunday's action. And the first race we're going to have a quick chat about is the 320 at Navan. It's a novice hurdle for horses who haven't finished in the first three in a grade 1 or grade 2 novice hurdle. And it's an interesting enough field, 6 lining up for this one. Topping the weight there is Old Man Dingle, who's taken all the penalties for stacking up a number of wins already this year. And Butch Cassidy, another interesting contender there for Henry de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore. A bit disappointing maybe in the Laws of the Race last time, but into calmer water here again. Seta, chance for Paul Townend, Willie Mullins, and the Munir and Isaac Swade team. Another one in there. We don't have betting for this yet, Johnny, but you'd imagine maybe the Mullins and the de Bromhead pair might be up towards the top of the betting. Old Man Dingles, I think, is a likeable horse, but might be difficult enough for him to give away the weight here.
Yeah, he's been a good example of Old Man River as a sire who would have been a left field kind of national on sire. But he's getting a few nice winners. This is probably his best one so far, 139. And Butch Cassidy, I was at his debut effort when he was trained by Philip Fenton. He won at Ballinrobe. There was already chat he was going on to Henry de Bromhead. Beat Samanzarek, who was a good horse subsequently before bombing out at Naas. In fairness, that was a good race. I hope you're right about the market here in the sense of what will make it, because I'd be very sweet on Card Counter without knowing the prices. He beat Dr. Eggman, who kind of beat himself at this stage, Dr. Edman. He's very frustrating. But the horse who was third that day, Punchestown, is a solid yardstick champion kid. Actually ran a very good race subsequently. Card Counter, he was probably travelling the worst of the three of them turning into the straight. He ended up winning by 5.5 lengths. So I love his profile coming into a race like this, stepping up to 2 miles 6 furlongs, or 2 miles 6.5 furlongs around Navan. Gordon Elliott's representative in the race, which is a tip in itself, really, given all the winners he's been having at Navan lately. He looks a lovely prospect, this horse, for a yard who eventually were among the winners at Cheltenham.
Eventually, yeah, wait until the very last minute to get there. But yeah, Card Counter is interesting, isn't he? Only second or third one on the track. Sorry, he's had 2 for Gordon already. Fell first time and then 1 second time out. Yeah, maybe being Gordon's only representative here is a bit of a tip. I'm probably going to give Butch Cassidy another chance, to be honest with you. He obviously didn't really perform in the Lauders and Naas, but Henry's horses weren't really flying at the time either. They seem to be coming back to form now again. He had a good week at Cheltenham last week, I suppose, as he always does. They kind of come in good in the spring again, and he's a half brother Fiona by Walk in the Park. Those colours, it's kind of hard to ignore them. And he had a massive reputation going into the Laurels and Naas, so it was kind of a big enough ask, I suppose, after only winning the bumper and the maiden hurdle. But you could probably put a line through that and give him one more go. I don't know what kind of price he'd be. I think on the tissues they have Butch Cassidy around 4-1 and Card Counter around 7-2. Whether they'll open up like that or not, I'm not sure. But I'm probably willing to give Butch Cassidy another chance in a maybe a bit calmer waters than his last assignment. But we'll go on to the next race. We're going to chat about the 4:30. It's a novice handicap chase, a listed novice handicap chase over the 3 miles. Again, no prices for this one yet. Western Foals tops the weights for Gordon Elliott and Jordan Gainford, rated 134. Chigoran is interesting for Henry and Rachel, the first time cheek pieces, first time in a handicap as well. I think the tissues are putting it as around 5-1 Hillsdale to be your favourite in here, but it could be tight enough betting for this one, Johnny. There's plenty you can give a good chance to.
Yeah, this is a race that punters definitely like. 16-runner handicap, so hopefully you don't get non-runners, which is obviously far from certain. But bookmakers will like it as well, because you could make a case for nearly the entire field here, Emma. I do like Black Bamboo, though. He's a horse I've kind of been a fan of since he started off, really, and he definitely hasn't won the races that his talent ought to have sort of produced at this stage. And John Murphy, obviously, White Birch was going so well for him. Been fairly quiet actually over the last year or so, the yard. But this horse's run was only 19 days ago at Leopardstown behind Golden Joy over 2 miles one. Now he wasn't a big price today. He was 130, which probably correlates with the fact that he's rated 125, but he just wasn't able to go the gallop. It was 2 miles, just over 2 miles in yielding ground. There was a faller at the last, but he ended up finishing a 6-length third and stayed on well I thought Sean Flanagan, he gave him a nice ride with a view to, he wasn't able to go the pace. There was no point hammering him, and he rode him to sort of finish as best he could and get his jumping going as well, because he's still lightly raced. I actually felt he jumped well. He doesn't look a massive horse, but he jumped well, and he was second to Zaband in handicap hurdle at Killarney in July off 127. He's off 125 here, so if he produces his A game, he'll be very, very competitive, really competitive. And I like the Leopardstown prep, so I'd be very hopeful for him. And Sean has ridden him the last choice as well.
Yeah, he could open up at a nice enough price as well. Obviously, don't have anything yet, but in this kind of race, he could be a good each way shout. But I don't know, I'm kind of weary of the JP McManus team, like Canal End. He kind of rated around 125, 126 over hurdles and kind of struggled to win off that. So how well handicapped he is, look, he's a bit low over fences. Look, he probably is capable of winning off 120, so you'd be a bit wary of him, as well as Verdun Place. Looks like a kind of one on the improve. But when I was kind of drawn to Global Export there for Gavin Cromwell, he ran in a kind of a similar contest to this, actually at Navan as well. On his last start, it was another listed novice handicap, but that was over the 2 mile 4. He was actually beaten by Prince Palace that day, so he has a bit of form to make up on him. But it'll be interesting to see what price he opens up at, I suppose. Prince Palace is likely to be kind of one of the market leaders, I'd imagine, but there's a big swing in the weights here. I think Prince Palace got £8 that day, and Global Export actually got dropped £1. And I don't think it was maybe that bad a run, really. He was a stayer on the flat. He won over 2 miles. He was kind of campaigned over or was staying trips. So you'd imagine over the obstacles, he probably relish every mile of every yard of the 3 miles. I think the sticky kind of ground they're likely to get here won't be an issue. I'd probably give him another chance, Global Export, to kind of, he's quite lightly raced. He hasn't got a whole pile of running done over fences for Gavin, and he's Claimer on board there, has ridden them the last couple of times, so he knows each other well. He knows him well. I think stepping up and trip will help him. And yeah, I'd probably give him a bit of a chance. I'm interested to see what price he opens up at, but he could be a kind of a bigger price than some of the others in this. So I think Global Export for me, Gavin Cromwell's horse, is absolutely on fire the last few weeks as well. So yeah, I'm going to stick with him in the 4:30, but we'll go over to Kelso to chat about one more race on the Saturday before we switch over to Sunday's action. It's the Herring Queen Series Final Mares Novice Handicap Hurdle. I didn't think I was going to get that out in one go. It's £100,000 handicap hurdle, and we do have prices for this one. 12 declared for this £100,000 contest. And your market leader at the top of the weights there, Surrey Bell for Adrian Keatley and Brian Hughes is 5-1. 11-2 Waka and Dia, 6-1 Northern Air, 6-1 Barrow Bowl, 17-2 Game Colours, and it's 9s Bar Those. Johnny, what's your opinion on this? I suppose Surrey Bell, she's a top weight, but the market still thinks she can win this one. Look, she was good on the flat. Hasn't got a whole pile of running done over hurdles. I think second on her first 2 runs and won her last two starts then for Adrian Keatley. So she's definitely a filly on the up, but could be a big enough ass now carrying top weight here.
Yeah, I mean, these are fillies that I certainly wouldn't be watching every day of the week. But I did look at the race as in relative depth earlier. Surrey Bell is one of 2 or 3 who could well make the pace. And she's a mare by Golden Horn. Golden Horn's getting some smart jumpers, actually. And she was actually second to Gibbs Island in Sedgefield in January, went 4-7 and run against the juvenile who bombed in the Fred Winter, but in fairness is better than that. The horse I'm going to tip up here is actually Irish trained. For all that Green Sky doesn't have much of a trip, she'd be quicker getting here than she would to a lot of the Irish tracks. Mare by Master Craftsman. And if you're ever up that neck of the woods, Emma, it makes a lot of sense for the Crawfords to get the boat across. Scotland and Larne, there's no distance between them. And Green Sky, you'll just see the form there. This time last year, she was actually running perfectly respectably in the Lincoln for Joseph O'Brien off Mark in the 80s, off Mark 84. Switch yards then, and her form was absolutely fine until the last day at Newcastle, which is a worry because that wasn't a good run. She was beaten 24 lengths. But first of all, she fell at Bellewstown running well. Then she was 4 to 5 off tomorrow's mark to Mac the Man when making a terrible mistake at the second last. And the run that is when she was third to cast a spell at Navan. She was only 13-2. She was quite well fancied, made the running, but was sort of didn't get a soft lead. And Qualmita was a short price favourite and actually was all out to beat. Now Qualmita runs this weekend and she hasn't won since. She has been very solid. This is a 50 grand pot, give or take. What is it? A 51 grand pot for horses who'll be rated roughly 110 in Ireland mares. So it's a really good price. And if she can, I mean, I hate tipping horses saying if she can do this, if she can do that, because it's like, but will she do it? And you can't say you're certain she will do it after her run the last day. But on her run at Navan off 113, if she can be sort of given a nice quiet ride at double figures, she must have a really solid each way chance. She's still likely race. Even her third to Wadeau when at Doncaster, obviously that form has worked out very well. Listed race in January of last year reads very well. Sure, Crawford hasn't had a winner a little bit, but the horses seem to be running fine. And I can only imagine she's been prepped for this with a pot like that for a fairly ordinary horse in terms of her jumps form. So there are lots of positives for me at the prices for all that run the last days are concerned.
Yeah, I'm thinking nearly exactly along the same lines as you. I feel like they must have been targeting this, you'd imagine, because she had her handicap mark, but then they went back for two more maiden hurdles afterwards. Yeah, you kind of made the point there. I think jumping will probably definitely have to slicken up a bit to land a point like this. She's not the biggest in the world, no, but if she can jump slickly, like she's got that bit more experience now over hurdles. Yeah, the Crawfords, they're one you keep an eye on when they're raiding Kelso as well. I it's exactly the same thoughts as you. I won't repeat your whole story, but I think, yeah, an each way price, Green Sky, like you said, she was a filly with plenty of ability on the flat. Definitely one to keep an eye on here. She's only a 5-year-old, still lightly enough raced over hurdles. Could be one on the up for sure. But we'll go over to Sunday's action now. And back to, I think, the first preview of the flat we've had on this show, unless maybe they previewed it last week when I wasn't there. No, there was no show last week, so there wasn't. So this is the first flat preview on the Irish Racing YouTube channel for quite a while now, and it's Naas on Sunday, and we're going to chat about a couple of races here. The first race, I suppose the big one, even though it's not the listed race on the card, but the Madrid Handicap, Johnny, kind of as you alluded to earlier, the 348. It's kind of one that's a classic contender could possibly emerge out of. Only a couple of years ago we saw Paddington winning this off American 97. Somehow they got him in there off that mark. And maybe looking at the entries for this, there was a couple of Ballydoyle ones who you said could be along similar lines to him. A couple of them not declared, but they do have Serengeti under Wayne Lord, and looks to be the big contender there from Ballydoyle. Plenty of these. Look, we don't have betting for this yet. Stephen Thorne's one, Wizard of Oz, you'd have to keep an eye out on. I suppose, Johnny, maybe the most difficult thing looking at the flat this time of year is, you know, it's quite early on. There's a long season ahead. Who's going to be really, really targeting these early races and things like that? But what's your thoughts on the Madrid at first glance?
Yeah, you can guess. I suppose you can get Dundalk as a bit of a guide to see where the trainers' horses are at, because definitely horses at this time of year. Some yards can be really cold in March and April, running okay, but it's not fully there. They might have had a quite retrain them for the long road ahead, lose the battle, win the war, and all of that. Dermot Weld is often sort of, we've seen him already among the winners. He can do well. It's not the strongest renewal of the Madrid, you'd have to say, and it honours Ron McKnight as well. It's a lovely gesture by the Irish Racing Writers Association, of which I'm a member this year. And Justin and all the lads deserve credit. Ron was a great character in the Northern Press, on the Northern Press circuit, and passed away recently. He might struggle to find the winner of this with everyone everyone bar the top two rated 90 or less, so it's not the strongest race. And I'm probably being a bit optimistic to say it might be a classic trial, but Serengeti's an interesting horse by Wootton Bassett. He did win well at Dundalk the last day, and his form wasn't bad. The horse that interests me most, Emma, is Manhattan Shoot for Michael O'Callaghan and Colin Keane. He's not the most flashy pedigree in the world by Vadamos, who's a cheap enough sire, and he didn't create any heat himself at the sales, but and he's been biggish prices so far. He didn't start off at a massive price in Naas earlier on, but Michael Callaghan is hoping for a bit of rain, which they're definitely going to get, and the ground should be more or less on the soft side after the rain they get. If you look at his run, the bird catcher, he was 13-2 in the cheek pieces, which are retained. You'd be offering very long odds he'd finish third, 3 furlongs down. So he stayed on well. Colin Keane is obviously an eye-catching booking, and he'll do for me, and should be 6 or 7 to 1, I would have hoped.
Very good, yeah, and you get the 3 places each way there with 11 runners as well. I kind of echo what you're saying. Maybe at entry stage, you could say maybe there was possibly a classic contender. The likes of Acapulco Bay is actually lining up in a different race on the card, but was entered for this one as well. Serengeti, like you say, look, his form isn't too bad. Like he was behind Twain and Maiden. Like that form worked out quite well. They seem to think a lot of that Twain. They met when they were 2-year-olds, obviously, but to be honest, I'm kind of be thinking along the lines of stable form this time of the year on the flat, and Wizard of Oz for Stephen Thorne, who's having an incredible time of it over the winter. And I think he's up at 38% strike rate in the last 3 weeks, which is just incredible. He had a treble in Dundalk last week. He had a winner at the opening meeting in the Curragh. And this horse, look, he hasn't ran since December, but he had been running in Dundalk throughout the winter. So he'd have a little bit of a fitness edge, I suppose, over his rivals. Like you said, this isn't probably the strongest renewal of Madrid. I was looking at it at entry stage, and I was kind of saying, look, I kind of like him, but at the same time, he'd probably be liable to a proper classy kind of group horse in this. But I think Wizard of Oz, given the way the race has panned out, Stephen Thorne, Jamie Powell, just a man on fire, and his horses can't do a whole pile wrong at this time of the year. Anyway, 38% strike rate in the last 3 weeks, like I mentioned. I want to stick with him there, Wizard of Oz, and he could be a nice enough price there. We don't have odds for this yet, but on the tissue he's 16 to 1, so I'll be keeping an eye on what price he opens up at. But we'll go on to the second race at Naas that we're going to chat about. It's the TOTE Irish EBF Novice Stakes. This is a 10 furlong race for 4-year-olds and upwards who haven't won a Group 1 or Group 2 contest. And this is actually a really interesting contest. 10 lining up for this. Dallas Star, last year's Ballysack Stakes winner. Dawn Rising, a classy performer for Joseph O'Brien. Trust Your Instincts for the same connections. Enfranchise, interestingly, making her stable debut for Willie McCreary. There's plenty of these who kind of could catch your attention, Johnny. Not even mentioning the rest. We don't have prices for this yet, but could be quite an interesting contest. And I don't know, this Dallas Star coming back. We haven't seen him in a while. He obviously had his prep run in Dundalk a few weeks ago. He was very impressive in the Ballysacks, and I was kind of leaning towards him here now.
Yeah, this is a race at pay. Like Naas is a great place to go racing for me, and this is a good day to go as well. Because you'll see a lot of seasonal debutants. How do they look in the paddock and all of that, and how the market is. It's hard to call in a race like this. I mean, my selection here is Brave, who's a Frankel bred who was behind Feed the Flame when last seen at Longchamp. Obviously, he's been off the track for quite some time. Feed the Flames is a Group 1 horse, now a Stallion actually, and Brave wasn't far behind on that occasion by Frankel. And the way, just looking at his form, he'd probably be held up to get the trip. I was actually texting Ger Lyons this morning, didn't glean an awful lot of information from him, but he's another Frankel filly actually making her debut later on as well. Brave, I think for the same colours. But what interested me, Emma, was just in the way the race was set up, because Dallas Star and Trust Your Instinct were probably the two horses to potentially make the market, or the form horses. Both like to go forward. Dallas Star, when he won the Leopardstown trial last year, that was a strange race. He was 50 to 1 and he made the run and probably took advantage of some horses bombing a bit on the day. But what was interesting for me was that when he beat San Andres at Dundalk, he showed that the completely different surface, and he can run to a similar-ish level of form. San Andres is one of the most reliable horses in training at the moment. So I treat that form with respect, and it was his first run since June. And Adrian Murray, even with his jumpers, have been unbelievable form. You think he'd like 50% strike rate from his last 6 runners in the flat or so the last few days. And Trust Your Instinct, who's fresh from a trip to Saudi, behind Shin Emperor, who's probably a bit of a tall order, didn't run badly, and is a very solid Churchill interest as well. But the likes of Dawn Rising will want further. There will be pace on in the race, and Brave will be able to sit. I'm honestly not sure how good he is, or how good what ability he retains. But Ger Lyons is a fantastic trainer. So without knowing the market, I'm fascinated to know how he'll be priced.
Yeah, he'll be interesting, right? The joint highest rate in the field there, 809. I'd be wary of him for sure. First time out for Ger Lions, Colin Keane, their connections, you wouldn't be too keen on taking on. But I like Alistair here, even though he has to give away all the penalties. Thought he was impressive. Obviously disappointed in the Derby. We didn't see much from last year, only the 2 runs. And that Ballysacks form, like you kind of got the feeling straight after the race that people were maybe saying, or it wasn't the greatest renewal, but kind of as you alluded to, like Illinois was in behind him that day. He was a multiple Group 1 winner since, second in the St. Ledger. The Euphrates won the Cesarewitch last year. Looked like a pretty good race. Has the prep on in Dundalk, like you said, Adrian Murray can get them ready early. I'd be leaning towards him now. He won't mind the testing ground either. In franchise, like I kind of mentioned, she gets the allowances from those at the top of the betting. She got a bit to fine on ratings, I suppose, but she did win the vintage tipple, wasn't it, in Goran last year, first time out for Shag, so she doesn't mind going off an absence either. New connections here, very interesting. She won't mind testing ground either. If she opened up at a massive price, you'd nearly be tempted into her, to be honest. She goes well fresh, won't mind the ground, but I think Dallas Star would be my main selection in that one. But we'll go on to Limerick before we wrap it up. Johnny's going to be in Limerick Sunday, Johnny Anchi on Racing TV, and it looks like a good card in finish. Just got declarations through this morning. And the first race we'll just have a quick chat about two of the races on the card. The 403, the Hugh McMahon Memorial Novice Steeplechase Grade 3 event over the 3 miles, and 6 lining up for this. Looks like a competitive little affair here. Fun is a mare who I quite like. She's getting the allowances from the boys. Paul Townend taking the Mountain Hero. Patrick normally accompanies her. Monbeg Park, a horse who finally managed to get his head in front the other day after a string of seconds and thirds, bumping into some good horses, I suppose. I'd imagine they might be the top two in the betting without seeing any betting yet, Johnny. What's your thoughts on this one?
I like Monbeg Park, Emma. Yeah, you say he finally got his head in front, but as you kind of alluded to, if you run behind like gorgeous Tom Jordan's back to normal, who would have been a hell of a fancy, I think, at Cheltenham, but he was out for the season. And then he beat Tire Kicker very impressively at Leopardstown the last day. We saw a walk in the park of Pat Foley's, just really relished 3 miles on nice ground in Mallow yesterday, and maybe that could be the case for him. This horse is probably as good, maybe the best looking horse that'll be at Limerick. I can't remember why he didn't sell. There must have been, I don't know why he didn't sell after in these early days. Obviously, the Doyle is a selling operation, but he's a brilliant jumper and a beautiful looking horse when he gets into rhythm. And his experience will be an asset here against Harry Desangre, who'll be my big danger. Monbeg Park now is rated 149, and that probably will be enough in this company.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I would be a bit wary of fun though. I thought maybe stepping up on trips she might have struggled, but she proved she stayed the 2.5 miles anyway at Naas in January, and she seems to be a more settled mare this year. Paul Townend taking over. She was obviously disappointing in Exeter last time, but I think she's a mare with a fair bit of talent, and she was only kind of a handy mare over hurdles. Kind of wondering how would she take to the fences, but she seems to jump them quite well. But still, I'd imagine Monbeg Park, like you said, rating a 149. He'll take a fair bit of beating here. I'd say I was kind of getting a bit worried about him. Did he kind of forget how to win a race? But like you said, he was bumping into good horses, the likes of Gorgeous Tom and a few others. I'd say he could be hard enough to beat here in this one. But just one more quick race we'll give a mention to. It's the last race of the day. It's the listed bumper in Limerick. It can be one that shows up a good horse. Look, we don't know a whole pile about these, Johnny, but look, the Yellow Clay won this 2 years ago. It looks like a strong enough field again. I'm quite a fan of One in the Well for the Coopers. Patrick Mullins taking the ride again. I'd imagine he'd be right up there in the betting. Anything else in here catch your eye?
Yeah, it's a cracking race, and thankfully with the 3 each way places, well, One in the Well and Eternal Echo clashing again. The ground could be key here, Emma, like Carrickmore Beach one and soft to heavy. I'm not sure what sort of ground she wants. Could be a smart horse. Light Up the Dark one on it was in terrible conditions at Naas, really testing ground, but you can't imagine with her pedigree that she'll be too bothered by better ground here. At this stage, I'd probably go with her without knowing the prices, but One in the Well by Master Craftsman, he's a horse who relish this ground as well after winning on Yielding. Hard race to price. I really don't know what will go off favourite. At this stage, there was a lot of chat around Light Up the Dark at Naas when I wasn't overly confident she'd go on the ground. She'd been bought by JP McManus since, maybe she'll light up the betting ring here and win this.
Quite possibly. Yeah, look, I'm going to stick with Cooper's horse here, obviously, without knowing any betting for it yet. But I just thought he was really impressive, winning a winner's bumper first time out, last time in Leopardstown. Patrick Mullins obviously taking the ride is probably a bit of a clue, and I just he looked really tough and classy that day. So I'd say he could be a nice horse down the line anyway, at least. But we'll wrap it up there, Johnny. Thanks very much for all of your contributions. Before we go, I'll ask you to give your best bet of the weekend, possibly.
Yeah, my best bet of the weekend, as much as I was saying, I suppose I like the Naas card a lot on Sunday. I'd probably give it this stage Card Counter as my best bet. I love the fact that he steps up and trip at Navan.
Very good. Yeah, it's kind of difficult. I was going to give one at Sunday in Naas. Look, I'll give him anyway. I think Dallas Star will take a fair bit of beating in the Devoy. Obviously don't know any prices yet, but if he opens up, at a reasonable odds, I think he likes the ground. He's had a prep run. He was a classy horse last year. He could take a fair bit of beating there. So Dallas Star for me in the Devoy Stakes. But again, thanks very much, Johnny, and thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're going to have a bet this weekend, make sure to gamble responsibly, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.